to my friend Millie for sending me a link to the Age of Albion channel. I've now watched several of his videos, and a lot of what he talks about connects surprisingly well with many of the things we've looked at before. He explores springs, waterways, towers, churches, and the relationship between these structures and the landscape around them.
Now, I've been travelling around structures for many years, documenting that everything is directly connected to water. Now, the structure behind me here, many people think castle, random tower. No, this is a water tower. We see the same fundamental design principles. The slits, this is exactly what you would expect from a water tower. Now, all the way downhill, we have a direct line, perfect straight with the so-called church. However, this is not a church. Your perception has been misled. That is directly also linked to the water grid. Now, the water would have been sent, the living water would have been sent right through the centre of that structure, and obviously would have used it in some way. A horse and cart civilization that took poo out of the window with smelly streets and smog and factory workers did not build this entire energy grid with living water, with vibration, with knowing the depth of the consciousness of water and energy. 3 water towers apparently in this structure that held almost 200,000 gallons each. Now, what if, I'm going to just put it out there to see what you all think, there is no such thing as castles and the entire history has been a lie? What if they maybe were used for that after, but their original function was never ever war? These were built to pump water around the towns and the cities on a mass scale. Look at the size of this structure. I'm telling you, if anywhere else this would have been labelled as a castle, but for some reason they've given a true narrative of this place, or at least a half-truth.
Over the years, many independent researchers have suggested that some of these magnificent old structures may have originally served a completely different purpose than the one we are told today. The idea is that their original function may not have been related to war or religion at all, but that they may have operated more like machines. Similar ideas have been proposed about the Great Pyramids as well. Geological studies have identified groundwater, natural fissures, and water-bearing channels within the limestone beneath the Giza Plateau. Perhaps these aquifers and underground channels served a purpose. As the Nile rose, water levels within these underground systems may have risen as well.
Why in the Great Pyramid is there no frescoes, there's nothing, no decorations at all? Now, some people have proposed the idea that the pyramids are actually energy machines. And so I liken this to the fact, like, you wouldn't put a decoration inside your oven.
No, I probably wouldn't. Another pyramid-shaped structure related to water is this inverted pyramid in India, Chand Baori, the famous step well. A structure over 20 meters or 66 feet deep, built around water and containing an estimated 3,500 steps, arranged across 13 levels. According to local folklore, it was built in a single night by a jinn. But if you go back to Egypt and travel south of Giza to the temple of Seti I in Abydos, you'll find something unusual behind the temple, known as the Osireion. It is famous for its megalithic granite architecture and its central platform, surrounded by a deep stone channel that resembles a moat. The Osireion features massive red granite blocks, some estimated to weigh up to 100 tons, fitted together without mortar. The structure extends to a depth of roughly 15 meters, or 49 feet, below the present ground level. The moat itself extends all the way down to the same level as the structure below. The visible part is just the roof of what lies below. So, what was this deep moat for? Bastions and star forts are also often surrounded by water, and remarkably few of them were ever involved in actual combat. So why go to such extraordinary lengths to build something so advanced if it was rarely, if ever, used for the purpose we're told? Mainstream historians generally argue that their mere appearance was enough to deter potential attackers. But I find the idea intriguing that they may have served an entirely different purpose. Perhaps that is even why some of them were referred to as batteries. Perhaps not a grouped set of artillery cannons, but a power station. I won't go into detail about this one just yet, as it will be part of my Brickmass series in December. But recently I visited Flakfortet in Øresund, one of 3 artificial islands that were constructed there, yet never saw war or combat. Both the artificial island itself and the entire fort were completed in around 6 years. Fountains are another interesting angle. Many independent investigators have suggested that fountains may once have served a purpose beyond simple decoration. Others argue they were always intended as ornamental features, much as they are viewed today. Even their placement within cities has raised questions. It is also interesting that many historic fountains used copper pipes and bronze components. Beyond their durability, copper is both electrically conductive and naturally antimicrobial. What we do know is that moving water can influence the surrounding environment in measurable ways. When water breaks into millions of tiny droplets, it creates a natural electrical phenomenon known as the Leonard effect. This process generates negatively charged ions in the surrounding air and can be observed around waterfalls, ocean waves, and fountains. Many historic fountains were engineered with an extraordinary level of hydraulic precision. The same nozzle designs and spray patterns that create their beauty also happen to be ideal for generating the Leonard effect. Another thing about water is that the first known organs were water organs, known as the Hydraulis. According to historical records, they were invented more than 2,000 years ago and used water to regulate air pressure, creating a steady flow of air through a series of pipes. They are considered the earliest known ancestors of the pipe organs that would later become common in churches across Europe. Many ancient cultures believed that certain tones could influence both the body and the mind. And we know that our bodies are built around energy and electrical activity, so the idea is not far-fetched. Many of the so-called rose windows found in churches resemble cymatic patterns. What if these patterns could somehow be reproduced through sound? That is one reason why Rosslyn Chapel in Scotland is so fascinating. Rosslyn Chapel is a 15th century chapel containing more than 200 carved stone blocks covered with geometric patterns, along with angels holding musical instruments. Thomas and Stuart Mitchell proposed that the patterns carved into these stones correspond to cymatic figures created by specific musical tones. One angel holding a musical scroll was interpreted by them as the key to linking the tones to the patterns. After 27 years of research, This eventually led to their reconstruction in 2005 of what they believed was a hidden melody encoded within the chapel's architecture, which they called the Rosslyn Motet. I like the idea that geometric and musical knowledge may have been preserved in stone through symbolism. So as I was looking at the map of the area, it just kept giving. I ended up spending hours looking at the map. From old graveyards to Rosslyn Castle, Hawthornden Castle, Wallace's Cave, and the so-called natural rock formations. I mean, just look at this place. The name Rosslyn is generally derived from the Gaelic words Ross, meaning rock or promontory, and Linn or Linn, meaning a pool or flowing water. Nearby lies St. Matthew's Well, an ancient spring that once served as the main water source for the original settlement of Rosslyn. Like many Scottish holy wells, it became associated with both Christian traditions and older Celtic beliefs surrounding sacred springs. Throughout history, sacred places were often adopted by new belief systems, with older traditions gradually taking on new meanings. Many of these ancient holy sites eventually became surrounded by churches and graveyards. After all, who wants to drink from a spring next to a cemetery? A quote attributed to Victor Schauberger states, "More energy is encapsulated in every drop of good spring water than an average-sized power station is presently able to produce." And that brings us to an interesting observation, because a huge number of natural waterways and springs have been buried, diverted, or enclosed. Was it simply done to make way for modern infrastructure? Or could there be more to the story? I'm going to borrow one more short clip from Age of Albion here. You'll find a link to his channel in the description below.
And here in the nearest village, there's another spring that they've stopped the flow of, and the source I know is in a field across the road, which is an absolutely gigantic spring. It actually covers the entire field. How saturated the ground is over there. It's actually once supplied the entire village. These types of springs, as you can see here, the spiral, this is the spiral of life again that the old world did on the sacred springs. There's 3 springs in just this village, and it used to supply the actual village of Penwortham down this road. This road is quite new in the last 100 years. There just used to be fields here, and pilgrims used to come and fill up from these springs, the St. Mary's Well, and there's 2 other wells. So these are just everywhere, and it shows how criminal these people are, these big corporate entities shutting down these springs so we can actually be fed this tap water and ozone bottled water, all about making money, all about ruining our connection to the earth, all about disconnecting us from the elements. This is water, the primary one of the primary elements.
Yeah, one of the primary elements. It reminded me of an old news clip I saw back in 2010. At first I thought it had to be fake.
The water in Amesbury is supposed to have fluoride in it, but Rob Damaris has been concerned for years about what's in the supply he gets from China. The residue you see here is what won't dissolve when he puts the fluoride powder in the water.
What is that?
We don't know.
You have no idea what's in there?
I don't know what it is. It's not soluble. And it doesn't appear to be sodium fluoride, so we're not quite sure what it is.
Damaris says the residue clogs his machines and makes it difficult to get a consistent mix.
For almost a year, these fluoride pumps in Amesbury have been off, and the water department says they'll stay off until they can figure out what's in the fluoride.
The Department of Public Health says more than 650,000 customers in 44 communities are getting the product in question. and only Amesbury has temporarily stopped using it. But despite those concerns, we want to be clear. Both state and federal health officials tell Team 5 Investigates Chinese fluoride is safe.
So if we return to the idea that people once made pilgrimages to holy springs, perhaps there was more to it than we have always assumed. Perhaps it was neither supernatural nor magical. Perhaps long ago, people had discovered ways of working more closely with nature than we do today. Here in Denmark, we also find many stories of holy springs associated with churches. In fact, Nydebo Church in North Zealand provides a particularly strong example. The publication Danmarks Kirker states directly that a holy spring still flows in the eastern boundary wall of the churchyard, not merely near the church, but built directly into the churchyard wall itself. It's also worth to mention that the Church of Denmark is one of the country's largest landowners, after the Danish state and the Danish defense. According to historical records, chapels and later churches were often built on or near older sacred sites. Many springs' names were originally associated with figures from Norse mythology such as Thor, Odin, Freya, and Tyr. Over time, many of these names were replaced with Christian ones, dedicated to saints, the Virgin Mary, and other biblical traditions. What's interesting is that the Reformation did not put an end to the use of holy springs. While some clergy condemned them as superstition, others continued to support the practice. In some cases, offerings left by visitors helped support the local parish and the poor. So once again, we find ourselves returning to the same question. Was there value in something that was naturally abundant and freely available? Holy water became associated with blessings, protection, and baptism. Yet long before churches were built, springs and wells were already regarded as special places and were often associated with healing, offerings, and spiritual traditions. So did Christianity create the concept of sacred water, or did it inherit and adapt a much older tradition that already existed around springs and wells?